was loud in my headphones. Okay. All right, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Sync Your Life podcast. We are continuing this little series we have going where I'm interviewing different members from my Sync digital course, asking them about their personal hormone health journeys, and of course, diving deeper with them to see maybe where they are still having struggles or where they're seeing wins in their health journey. I'm also asking them specific questions about what the Sync course has done for them. So this is sort of a testimonial series, but it's also a really good way for me to do sort of some live coaching and to check in on my people, right? To see how they're doing, how things are going, and see if I can help in any way. So I'm bringing these to you live. I'm bringing these podcast episodes to you guys live so you can get a feel for, maybe whether or not your specific issues and your health related issues are similar to what these women are going through. I've already been receiving some great feedback from people that are saying, oh my gosh, I heard so-and-so's story and I felt like they were talking to me, right? Or I felt like they were talking about me. And that's what I'm looking to do on these podcast episodes. I'm looking to interview women who are taking the initiative, who are stepping up and saying, hey, I'm going to be my own best advocate. I'm going to start standing up for myself and saying that, I feel off and I'm not taking that as an answer. I'm not going to say that I'm not going to let my doctor tell me that things are okay and normal when I don't feel normal. And so I'm bringing these ladies to you so that you can gain the confidence that you need to stand up for yourself and to say, no, I'm going to become an advocate for my own health as well. And I want some help doing that. So my guest today is Rebecca Lawson. She has been a client of mine in the Sync course and beyond with health and fitness for several years, but she joined the Sync course in 2020 when I launched the beta round of it. Early during the COVID pandemic when we decided to do this. And so she's kind of been a lifer. She's been a Sync monthly member. She's been a very active participant in the Facebook group. So she's going to be a great interview for today because I know she's gotten the most out of the group. She's taken advantage of everything from the videos to the meal plans to the workouts to all of it. So Rebecca, I'm so glad you're here. I want you to just take a couple minutes to tell people listening, a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Who are you? Who is Rebecca?
Oh, thank you, Jenny, so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. A little bit about myself. I'm a 38-year-old mom of one, wife, music lover, into health and fitness. That journey, of course, goes up and down. But I wanted to join this course just because my life was kind of changing as far as coming off of birth control for the first time in almost 20 years. And I was excited to have that health and fitness part mostly, like the meal plans and the schedule. So I'm really excited to be here and share my story with everyone.
Yeah, we were just talking a little bit before we started recording about how Rebecca came into the course. And she was in a unique situation, although I do see this often with women where they reach out and they say, hey, I'm currently on birth control. Can this still help me? And she was kind of in a unique position where she was contemplating, right? Like, should I go off of the pill? Should I stay on the pill? And of course, I never give anybody, diagnoses or anything like that. I never tell them one way or the other, but I do say, hey, you know what? You can learn a lot from the Sync course. You can learn a lot about your hormones. So Rebecca, tell us what that was like coming into it. I mean, I know you came into the course still on the birth control pill with the anticipation of coming off of it. So tell us like what that initial part of your journey looked like.
Yeah, so I had been on the pill since I was 13, I think. I actually started on the pill initially because I was having painful ovarian cysts. And of course, the pill is kind of the problem for pretty much any female issue when you're 13 years old. And then, life happens, and that was the answer as far as, birth control and hormone things. Then my husband and I, we just got to a point in our life where we were sure we weren't having any more kids, and I was ready to come off the pill. And I really didn't assume that I would have any problems. I thought everything would be a-okay. I was already working out, I was already eating pretty healthy, but this whole concept of working out with my cycle, how would that work? What would my cycle even look like after, being on the pill for 20 years? I was kind of clueless about that. I had not really ever tracked my cycle. So I was really excited about like the idea of, hey, if I eat these certain foods and I work out a certain way, then I can, benefit my body even better, gain more muscle, not have to do as much cardio, eat some delicious food. And so I just said, okay, we're done. I'm done with the pill. And I didn't really know what was going to happen after that. And then, my body's like, hey, we're actually making hormones for the first time in forever. Um, and it's kind of been a journey from there, figuring out, okay, I still feel somewhat okay. Then I didn't really feel very good. And what does that mean? How do I find a practitioner? Um, and I felt really excited and prepared going in because of your course. Once I was faced with those issues, I was like, okay, I know how to tackle this. Jenny taught me what to do. Um, so it's been a kind of a process since then.
Yeah. So I remember, I mean, when I think of you, I think of patience, right? I think of like, okay, you were so eager, right? Like, okay, you're like, I'm ready to come off the pill. I'm ready to cycle sync my fitness and nutrition. And you were ready to do it like day one. And so when it comes to, something like that, like coming off the birth control pill, I really like to tell women that you're going to have to require some patience, because it takes your body 3 to 4, maybe even more cycles to really sort of restart, right? To sort of get its groove back, so to speak. And some women, it takes longer. And so I know for you, you were like eager to do your testing, and we're like, hold off. You got to come off the pill. You've got to let your body sort of sort itself out for a few months, and then get the testing under your belt. I know you've also had sort of a roller coaster experience with finding a practitioner, which I want to talk about. So let's go there next. So in the course, very first thing right off the bat that I do is I help you find a functional medicine practitioner. I know that can sometimes be the most, I don't know what to say, like it can be the hardest part of the journey, honestly, is getting the right person to work with you. From there, of course, we go into testing, and I equip you with materials to take to that doctor and questions to ask. But tell us a little bit about your unique situation with, finding a functional medicine doctor and where you've landed at this point.
Oh, well, it's been a journey, that is for sure. Starting out, I went to my GP and I said, look, I came off the pill. I want to get this testing done. What about hormones? What do I need to do? And she basically said, well, she doesn't do any of that. She practices with a Catholic hospital, so they don't really do anything as far as touching hormones in any way. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do here? So I reach out to my local community pages and say, does anybody have any suggestions? I get a few suggestions. I try one. She's supposedly great, like 45-minute drive each way. The first time I go, they want to talk to me about weight loss. Oh, are you interested in taking this weight loss pill? And I'm like, no, I'm here because at that point, I had done the Dutch testing myself because my doctor wouldn't do it. And I just kind of wanted to have a baseline. I had that testing with me. I'm like, look, I know there's a problem. I want, taking a pill for weight loss is not going to solve my hormone problem. Not interested. But I gave them the benefit of the doubt. She ordered some blood tests, which was kind of another red flag there. I went to see her a second time, and I still just wasn't really happy with how she wanted to tackle the testing, what her answers were as far as how to deal with my test results. And I felt pretty comfortable and confident in my choice that she wasn't the right one because of what I've learned in this course. Doing the research and listening to you and all of the wonderful information that you give us, I really was like, okay, this person isn't the right one for me. So then I wound up going to a second practitioner who was a nurse practitioner that everyone said, oh, she's fabulous. And she was pretty good until it became time for, okay, once again, she did testing, saliva this time, which got points for her. But I found out that she didn't actually do any prescribing. So then I'm back to, back
Okay.
to beginning again.
Mm-hmm.
And based on your experience with working with your pharmacy as far as doing your custom hormone, I reached out to my custom pharmacy that's local to me that does all of the hormone stuff and said, look, do you have a list of practitioners that can help, that prescribe here for you for bioidentical hormones? And they're like, yeah, we have a list. But they also did consults. So here I am going, okay, well, I can't get in to see this third doctor now. for about 3 or 4 months because it takes forever to get in to see a doctor. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to pay to have this consult taken. And that really kind of pushed me in the right direction. They were able to recommend some over-the-counter progesterone. They were able to recommend some supplements that were helpful as far as they were able to just look at my testing and go, okay, you have all this testing done. This is what we suggest. And so you get in to see your doctor. And that kind of started me on the journey to actually starting to feel a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I saw that doctor, I was like, bing, finally somebody who does saliva testing, who doesn't just want to give me the easy way out as far as solving things. They actually wanted to really get to the root of the problem. So it was really probably at least a year-long process to find that right practitioner. And I knew I was making the right choices along the way because of what I had learned in this course. I'm confident in my choices.
And I also think too, don't you think that like the community of our Facebook community was probably helpful for you too, in just keeping you going? Because I know there were times where you were like, oh my gosh, like not another, practitioner, not another burned bridge or whatever, like, and so I always tell people like the community aspect of this course is so helpful too, because you have so many other women who are going through the same struggles, who are there to say, hey, keep going, this isn't a failure. This is just pointing you in a new direction. And so I wanted to call out one specific thing that you said, and I've said this on the podcast before, but if you're listening to this for the first time, it's worth saying again. When it comes to finding a functional medicine doctor, the first and usually the best way to go about it is to ask for word of mouth referrals, right? Because usually when you're asking friends and people that you trust and other people who have been seeing a functional medicine practitioner, that comes with a level of trust. And so you feel like, okay, this is the right person. Didn't happen to be the case for Rebecca. But a lot of times that is usually the best first step. I do still agree that you took the best first step, but I love that you just brought up the apothecary, which is the specific custom pharmacy she's referring to. Apothecaries actually compound medications and treatments, a lot of which are natural treatments. And so that was the case for me as well. When I actually started looking for a second opinion in 2017 with my migraines. My functional medicine doctor had always been amazing for me, but I thought, maybe I just need an extra pair of eyes. Like maybe I need somebody else to be looking at this. So my first line of attack was to go directly to the apothecary and to say, who's in your arsenal, right? Like what doctors are prescribing bioidentical hormone replacement in your facility? Who can you refer me to from this area who you work with? And so they gave me the name of somebody that became sort of my secondary practitioner, so to speak. But that's a great point that you made. And I wanted to bring it forward, which is, ask people for word of mouth referrals if people are working with functional medicine doctors, but you want to make sure that they do the right kind of testing. Like Rebecca said, you want somebody who's on board with urine testing and saliva testing. And you want somebody who's also equipped and knowledgeable about things like bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. A lot of this day and age, OBGYNs are not on board with bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, or they just don't know enough about it. And so asking those types of questions can be really helpful in getting you to the right person. But like Rebecca, it can take time, right? It can take time to get to the right person. So now I'm assuming here we are, it's, 2 years later, you have a practitioner that you're working with. Tell us about sort of, what was uncovered through that testing with the right practitioner? What kinds of things came about with that testing?
Yeah, so my results have changed slightly, I think, over the year. As you mentioned at the beginning, it takes time for your hormones after you come off the pill to really kind of balance out. So there's been some slight adjustments. But for me, I found out that my migraines are due to lower progesterone, and that I have some low testosterone, kind of an imbalance. So I'm taking a prescription DHEA, taking the progesterone cream certain days of my cycle. And those two things for me have made like a huge difference in how I feel. I don't have, I haven't had my cortisol tested recently, but I know that it's better because I feel better.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that late afternoon crash anymore, where I just feel like if I just close my eyes for 5 seconds, I'll just sleep forever and ever. So for me, the supplements have really made a huge difference in just the balance of things, and then also that lower cortisol in the afternoons.
Yes. So your cortisol came back low. Is that correct? Okay. Yeah. So Rebecca and I remember when we were talking, throughout the past 2 years, we've talked quite a bit, and she and I have very similar tendencies in our health. So I knew, I had a feeling that progesterone was at play for her. I knew she was a migraine sufferer. And so it makes me so happy to know that you're on the right track with that supplementation. A lot of women, I think, are out there living with estrogen dominance triggered migraine, which is, it can be low progesterone, or it can just be that your progesterone is too low in relation to your estrogen. And so the fact that you're able to get that supplementation going, that you're working on, all the different areas that you're potentially weak, right? All your deficiencies. Step one of the sync course is to help you get to the root of what's going on for you and to start supplementing those voids. Because I found that after 10 years of working as a personal trainer and nutritionist and teaching people, fitness and nutrition, I could have easily turned this course into just being about fitness and nutrition. It could have been just about cycle syncing, workouts, and nutrition. But I knew that if we didn't get to the root cause of what was going on, and if we don't start supplementing those voids, it's, the workouts and the nutrition are like surface level. We got to go deeper, right? We've got to go deeper to how are you sleeping? We got to go deeper to how are you feeling on a stress level? We got to go deeper as to what are your sex hormones doing? Or for some women, it's their thyroid, right? And so I feel like you're on the right track there. So now that you've kind of got the right supplementation going, what types of things are you noticing as far as improvements specifically?
Definitely, I don't feel as tired overall. I was having that really severe fatigue in the afternoon, a lot of brain fog too, where I just feel like I couldn't focus or remember things the way that I should, night sweats, sometimes hot flashes even. And then struggling with my workouts, knowing that I just didn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, as someone who's been into health and fitness for a while now and has been at various parts of the journey, I know what it feels like for my body to feel pretty good, and I didn't. I felt bad like pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
And when you have a family and you want to feel good and you know what it's like to feel good, it's a real struggle.
Yeah.
To just know that you feel awful. But now that those things are clearer and I'm feeling better, I have more energy, I sleep better, I don't wake up all the time at night drenched in sweat, maybe at certain times of my cycle still, but where it's more normal for that to happen.
Right. Right.
So I have seen a huge difference. It's still been a bit of trial and error as far as adjusting progesterone so that I don't still get migraines sometimes because of the imbalance. But overall, it's made such a huge difference. It's like I feel like a different person than I did a year ago. Yeah.
I'm just curious, are you, do they have you on progesterone just for the second half of your cycle?
So I actually am on for my whole cycle, but then if you recall, I was having some migraines then at the beginning of my cycle. So I have adjusted it a little bit where I wait instead of starting on day 1. I'm waiting until about day 5 or 6, and then I start back on, and then it cycles up. So the time where I would be ovulating, then I increase that amount of progesterone until a few days before my cycle would hit.
Yes. Perfect. Yeah. So there are a lot of women who have taken the course, and I think this is a super common issue, right? I think estrogen dominance, it comes into play for a lot of women, especially in their 30s and early 40s. And progesterone cream can be a great solution for them, right? Doesn't necessarily mean it's great for everybody, but a lot of times doctors only feel comfortable prescribing it for the second half of the cycle. And that's because progesterone is really only at play truly in the second half of the cycle, right? It comes into play around ovulation. It comes in to support a potential pregnancy. So that's why it's considered the luteal hormone, right? It's your calming and relaxing hormone. But for women like Rebecca and I, who are prone to migraine, who are prone to dominance throughout the month, I know progesterone has been a game changer for me even earlier in my cycle. Ironically, we've had the same experience where my doctor had me on sort of a continual dose starting really light, really small during my bleed, and then gradually increasing over the course of the month. We call it a titration schedule. And I was also having headaches that were in the first part of my cycle, the first few days. And so I've done the exact same thing. And I've backed off of my dose in the first handful of days. I let my body bleed and I stay flatlined with my hormones. And trust me, I can feel it. And then as soon as that progesterone starts, it's like the birds start singing and the sun comes out and you're like, oh, it's a new day, right? And so, but yeah, playing with those dosages, all of this is so part of the journey, right? And I can remember a good friend of mine who was sort of like a year ahead of me. Like she had had the same issues with migraines and had started the cream about a year ahead of me. And so when I started, it was so helpful to have her, have somebody that had gone through it, because she was like, hang with it, right? Like change your dose, but then stick with it for 3 or 4 months and then see how it goes. And it can be such a, a process of figuring out what works for you, but it sounds like you're in a good place with it. So that's great. So from the supplementation, we move more into what I would call the fundamentals of hormone balance, which you've mentioned your sleep has improved, you're on the supplementation. So I want to talk a little bit about just exercise and nutrition. You came into this being somebody who loved to exercise, but maybe weren't feeling your best when you were exercising. How have you taken, the cycle syncing approach of the fitness piece? How have you applied that and what have you noticed?
So I love the monthly calendars that come out in the monthly sync emails for the subscription. They, to me, were complete game changers in knowing, hey, I don't necessarily have to do the same thing month to month. I can still follow my cycle and mix it up, but I really noticed a difference in resting when I need to rest, lifting heavy, and really seeing a difference. Like, hey, I actually can lift way heavier at certain times of my cycle than I thought that I could, which was really kind of surprising for me as someone who had lifted regularly and kind of dabbled and not really doing the rest days like I was supposed to be doing or should have been doing. The calendars really helped me to see, okay, I would really thrive doing cardio at this point or backing off at this point, and then taking those rest days when I really should be taking the rest days. Trusting my body, like if I feel like I shouldn't be working out, I don't feel well recovered because of where I am in my hormone cycle, okay, it's okay to take that extra rest day if you need to. And then as far as the nutrition, including things that maybe I wouldn't have ever thought about, seed cycling, eliminating things like anti-inflammatory dairy, or inflammatory, not anti-inflammatory. You can cut that part out.
Yeah, we can mix that. No worries.
Inflammatory foods like dairy, and just cutting that out and seeing how my body feels. Even going one step further with the functional doctor and doing, food sensitivity testing is what I'm kind of going through right now, but it really has made a huge difference in knowing when and what to do and not really having to think about it. Like, okay, well, I know that today's day 1 or day 2, so I'm gonna, if I want to do something, I'm gonna go for a walk outside, or I'm gonna do some light yoga, or I'm gonna just take a rest day and let my body do its thing.
Right.
And then knowing to lift heavy and when to lift heavy has been really helpful.
Yeah.
In just the overall journey of it.
Yeah. So I've said this before with someone else that I interviewed, but I had my own experience with this when I started cycle syncing. I trusted the experts to a degree, but when it came to ovulation, most experts will say, let your body ovulate, do more active recovery, back off for those 24 to 48 hours. And I just didn't trust them. I was like, no, I can't take 2 days off in the middle of this. No way. And so I was sort of the rebel in the beginning before I ever introduced this to the world. When I was my own guinea pig, I was like, no, I'm going to push through. And those workouts were the worst workouts. Anytime I would push through on a day that my cycle and my body was telling me no, I could feel it. And so once you start to learn what your hormones are doing and you start to track your individual cycle to really get a handle on, this is how long my luteal phase is. This is how long my ovulation phase is. Once you start to know those things, and then you have the knowledge of cycle syncing your fitness, you can't unlearn it. You know what I mean? Like if I were to ever try, we were actually on vacation a couple weeks ago, and I told my husband, I was like, I'm going to try to, I like to take extra rest days on vacation. I like to let my body sort of let that muscle adaptation happen and like take it easier. It doesn't mean that I don't skimp on my nutrition. I keep my nutrition on point, but I don't push as hard, right? I don't take dumbbells with me on vacation, nothing like that. And so I was like, I'm going to do some HIIT cardio a couple times this week and some yoga. And one particular day I did a HIIT workout on vacation, and I felt like I was just moving through mud. I felt like I was in quicksand. And I was like, maybe it's just from the Florida heat. Like, I don't know what this is. Like, am I dehydrated? And sure enough, I brought my scope with me on vacation, and I dabbed my saliva, and I was in transition for ovulation a little earlier than most months. And so I was like, like, of course I felt bad, right? Like, of course my estrogen's surging, my ovulation's getting ready to happen. Like, this explains why I felt so draggy. So I did want to ask you about that. Like, are you, especially since you're a migraine sufferer, are you using the scope? And what does that look like for you? Be honest.
Yeah, so I will definitely say I use the scope a lot more towards the beginning of once again, I've been at this for a while now.
Yeah.
So I definitely was using my scope more at the beginning because I had no clue. Am I ovulating? Am I not ovulating? What does that even feel like? What does that even look like? I was completely clueless. And I remember the first time I took a picture of the ferning, and I posted it in the Facebook group, and I'm like, is this what it's supposed to look like? Is this me not ovulating? And everyone's like, yes, yay. And I had no idea. And I was like, wow, okay, this makes sense. Like, this is pretty clear that
Yeah.
this is what this means. It's pretty clear inside that little scope. Now that I've been at it a while, I don't really check it as consistently as I did before, because I can feel.
You can feel it.
I can feel it. I can feel the changes in my body now that I'm more in tune with it. And I can just tell by the way I'm feeling. And some months I'm like, yeah, well, my cycle was a little bit different this last time. I felt a little different, so I need to check and see, like, am I ovulating? Did I skip a month?
Right.
And you kind of get to learn those different teeny tiny intricacies that you would have never really known if you had no clue, which I had no clue when I started all of this. So it's amazing how, as you track things, you become more in tune with your body. Now when I go to the doctor, I'm like, when was your period? I'm like, oh, it was this day. Like, I know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're like, I'm on day 17 and a half. Yeah.
Maybe it was this many days ago. I'm not quite sure.
Right.
Now I know right away. Like, I don't even have to look. I know exactly where I am in my cycle.
Right.
And it's nice to have that predictability, to be aware and in tune with your body. And the scope was huge for me at the start, to know where I was and if I was ovulating, and how that felt and where it was in my cycle. Because I actually learned with the scope that I ovulated a little bit later in my cycle than most people do. So it was like around 3 or 4 days past when
the average
calculator would say I should be ovulating.
Right.
I would have, once again, never known if I hadn't been using the scope to check it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? It's common for something like low progesterone for you to have sort of what we would call like a later ovulation. That happens for me too. I'm curious, are you noticing that, or have you noticed when you were using it that do you ovulate pretty regularly now? Because I know in the beginning, obviously you were coming off the birth control pill. So it's, again, pretty common for women to have several anovulatory cycles, meaning no ovulation, even if you're having a bleed. So if you're listening to this and you're like, but I have a period every month, well, you could be having a period or a pill bleed, but not necessarily obviously ovulating. If you're on the birth control pill, you're definitely not ovulating. But if you're coming off of it, you most likely will have some anovulatory cycles while your body figures itself out. So I know in the beginning, obviously, that's why you were so excited when you did finally see the ferns a few months after using the scope. It was like, oh, it's back, right? Here she is, she's back. And we talk about ovulation being the 5th vital sign, right? It's something that we need to pay attention to. Your ovulation is sort of the most important component of your menstrual health. So after you started ovulating, do you ovulate regularly? Like, are you ovulating each month, or what does that pattern look like for you?
Most months, yes.
Okay.
I do sometimes have a skip month here
Okay.
and there, but most months, yes.
Okay. Yeah. And that's great to know, because I know for me, before I was using a scope, I always wondered, why am I having some months where I'm like so miserable with headache? And why am I having other months where I feel really great the whole month? And it started to make sense. Like when I started using the scope and tracking my saliva patterns, I started to notice that for me, it was like an every other month thing. I would have a really good month and a really bad month and a really good month and a really bad month. And then I started to notice through those patterns, I was ovulating and not ovulating, ovulating and not ovulating. And so, of course, through with my doctor, working with my doctor and working with my apothecary pharmacist, we came to the conclusion that I must have one ovary working more strongly than the other, right? I must have some sort of difference there. And it explained so much about my what I thought was no pattern, right? I was going to my OB and I was saying, I don't know the pattern. Some months are bad and some months are good. And then when I started tracking, it made total sense. Oh, this is why I'm feeling this way. So, okay, when it comes to, you talked about your fitness and cycle syncing that, and I know you're one of the people who are like, yes, I love these monthly calendars. Like they help me mix it up and stay on track with cycle syncing. When it comes to nutrition, how does that look for you? Like, what have you found valuable in learning about, and what are you applying there?
I am constantly using the recipes that you send out. Also fixate. I mean, I I try and do the meal planning every week so that we have, so that I'm not scrambling, because I feel better when I eat better. And
Mm-hmm.
even though sometimes it's nice to like go all out and eat the other stuff, I don't really feel great after I do it. So we consistently try and eat pretty healthy here at our house. But I am constantly going back to the Fixate cookbooks. I'm constantly going back to the meal plans and the recipes that you send out, and then tweaking or adjusting for what works for my family versus what works for me. Sometimes I'll make something and then they'll eat it with cheese and I'll eat it without cheese, or things like that. It's made a big difference because I do feel better when I eat better, and I know that. Um, but it's, I think for a lot of people out there, it's a constant struggle. And for me, it's a constant struggle too, to find that balance. Like if I constantly am weighing and measuring, it kind of messes with my head a little bit. So I have to back off and not really microscope every single choice that I'm
Yes.
making. Um, and finding that balance has been really important for me. Um, and also when I eat better, I feel better during my workouts. I just feel better overall. And
Yeah.
so I do sometimes struggle, but overall have made quite a bit of progress from where we were several years ago.
Yeah.
And overall just my eating and feeling good or bad, and finding out what works for me and doesn't work for me, which is one of the journeys I'm in right now.
Right.
Eliminating things that just don't make me feel good and keeping the things that do make me feel good.
Yeah.
Finding that balance.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because, if once we start supplementing a person accordingly, so once your doctor gets you on the right regimen as far as supplementation, you start to feel your energy come back, you start to sleep better, you start to see these improvements, you get to the point where you're like, I'm ready to work out, I'm ready to push it, I'm ready to cycle sync. If someone says to me at that point, I don't know what's happening, I'm energy crashing, or I just don't have enough, I don't feel like I have enough fuel, right? Or I'm burning out in my workout, then I know exactly what's going on. And that is an underfueling of food. And it's so common for women. And you didn't necessarily say this, but I want to say it because it applies to so many people. Most women are not eating enough, and they're not eating enough of the right food. And so the one thing that I usually hear about is, oh my gosh, these meal plans are amazing, I don't know if I can eat this much food. Right. And so I don't think that women necessarily know like how much they're supposed to be eating in order to feel good. And I think about, the culture that I was raised in was very much like a snacky culture, right? We eat a lot of snacky foods, junk foods. My family was not really one to eat out as a child, but we did have a lot of boxed processed foods in the house. We had a lot of, I can remember my mom saying things like, oh, I didn't need to eat lunch today because I had a whole bunch of crackers, or something like that. It's like, whoa, what? Like, this is the mentality that a lot of us grew up in. And so we restrict, it's typical diet culture to say like, oh, if I want to lose weight, I'm going to cut back. But when we know what we know about women's hormones, we know that sometimes cutting back without a plan, like just calorie restriction, your body's going to go into fight or flight, and it's going to start to hold on to that fat, and it's actually going to deter you from that weight loss to begin with. So a lot of times when I get women eating more and more of the right foods, it's like the icing on the cake, right? Like now they've got the right supplementation, they're filling their voids, they're starting to exercise, they're starting to feel better. Now, if we can just get them eating enough, it's like the heavens open up, right? It's like now the potential is yours, because now you can push harder in your workouts. You can have the energy, your body can recover efficiently, because we're obviously upping your protein, we're upping your fat. A lot of women come into this program afraid. They're afraid of fat, right? They're like, I'm supposed to eat fat, but not dairy. Like, correct. We're going to remove the dairy. We're going to remove all the sort of processed oils. And we're going to give you things like avocado and hummus and olive oil and the healthier fats that's really going to help service your hormones. So that was sort of a side tangent, but since we were talking about nutrition, I wanted to bring it up. So I'm glad you said that, though, about what you're doing with your gut right now, because I know that you're sort of following a gut protocol right now. You just got some testing back showing some food sensitivities. So this is sort of a new journey for you. But I find that this is what you're doing is you're taking what you've already learned and you're going a little bit deeper, and you're saying, okay, now I know which leg of my hormone chair is faulty, which one is a little bit weaker. I'm supplementing that, and I'm working in alignment with my cycle and my body. So now you're taking it to the foundation, right? And you're saying, okay, let's figure out my gut. Like, something is wrong with my digestive system. I feel whatever it is, like for some women it's bloating or constipation or whatever. It's different for everyone, but I love that you're tackling this next. So you've had some food sensitivity testing. You are eliminating foods. You're following sort of like a gut regimen right now. Where are you on that journey, and what have you noticed there?
So I'll say this first of all, I would never have started on this part of the journey if I hadn't found the functional doctor that I did find, because I went to her and I said, I'm still having a lot of migraines, even though they're not at the times of my cycle where I would normally be getting migraines. And she said, well, I don't think they're hormone related. They're most likely due to food issues.
Triggered. Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling other than that? Are you having, digestive issues, any brain fog, anything like that? I'm like, well, maybe I'm having some of these issues. Yeah. So I did get the testing done, and I was really surprised that a lot of the foods that I eat every single day are triggers for me right now. I'm about a month in, and I have a huge difference in, once again, my digestive issues for sure. And then also I was having some muscle aches, like random, where you feel like you did a workout, but you didn't actually do a workout. Your body's just kind of achy, or had, once again, migraines. And by eliminating these foods that my body is not really happy with right now, they're causing inflammation for me, whether it's long-term or temporary, we'll find out. But by eliminating those foods, I do feel, once again, night and day difference.
Mm-hmm.
And just my gut health overall is way better. And it's kind of interesting to be doing this gut protocol on top of it, because it's kind of like kismet.
Yes.
It happened, at the same time.
Yes.
So while I have to kind of tweak what we're doing in the gut protocol based on my own personal testing, I feel, once again, very empowered. And I would have felt that way if I hadn't found that right functional doctor.
Right.
That led me to this part.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to know it is difficult to eliminate things that you were eating every day, but to know that it's worth it in the end, because I do feel better, and that's what keeps me going.
Well, and you've established over the course of the last couple of years this sort of new level of body awareness, right? Like we just talked about how you might not need the scope anymore because you're so in tune with your body, when you're ovulating now, and you pick up on those signs. And so that tells me that now there's this level of proprioception, right? Where you're understanding your body, you're understanding how you feel, this body awareness. And so now it's like you're ready for this next step. You're ready for the food part. If we had started off with you in 2020 being like, okay, you need to eliminate all these foods, I'm not sure where we would be. Yeah. Because the awareness wasn't there, right? The awareness wasn't there. And so, by learning, people ask me all the time, they're like, how do you stay motivated? Like, how do you keep dairy from your diet? Or how do you keep working out or whatever? And I'm always like, well, it's pretty simple. Like when you understand how your body feels, you can't put your body, you can't suscept your body to that anymore. You know what I mean? Like you can't just be like, oh, well, I feel really terrible on dairy and I know I feel that way, so I'm just going to eat it again. Like you stay motivated to stay off of it. Right. And so I think this is perfect timing for you. I look back and I think, okay, it's been 2 years since you started this with the sync course. You know, obviously you've seen lots of progress over the last 2 years. Where do you feel like you're still struggling, or is it mostly in this food sensitivity area? And what is sort of your next goal?
I think this is a more of a life thing, but I think one of the areas I struggle with right now is my actually exercise, just because I recently started working for the first time since before I had my son, so almost 7 years. And so finding that balance, I'm still working on. So that's going to be one of my goals here soon. Once I'm done kind of figuring out this whole food
Right.
thing. But overall, I'm excited that I've really learned this really important lesson in doing all of this, starting with your course, is to trust my own perspective of my body and to know that like I am the only person that can tell me if I really feel a certain way or if I don't, and trusting that so that I know if I'm feeling good or not good when I do something. I know where to go with my workouts. I know where I'm strong or lacking in my overall fitness. And because I have the tools, I know how to fix it.
Right.
I know how to go to the doctor and say, okay, I don't feel great on this dose. Can you tweak it? Or I don't feel great because of the way I'm eating. Is there an issue? Or, I'm struggling with getting my food in. So maybe I shouldn't be pushing heavy workouts until I get my food figured out. It's just learning to trust your own body and your own perception of your body.
Yes.
That you're really the only person that knows
yes.
what is happening in this body.
Yes.
And I think that's a really important lesson that most of us don't ever learn to trust our own gut about what's happening. So I think that's something that I'm so thankful that I've learned through this process. And I wouldn't have ever learned it if I hadn't started this process 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think that is number one for everyone, right? Is just this newfound gained confidence to go in and be your own best doctor. I like to tell people that in our society, obviously, doctors are the ones who prescribe and diagnose, but they prescribe and diagnose based on what you tell them. And they do that based on your intuition. A lot of times I'll come out of doctor's appointments and I think, all I really did was share my intuition and the doctor agreed, right? Like the doctor agreed that that's what's going on. So if you can build up this self-awareness in yourself of your body, you become so confident. You become so confident in understanding what this should look like, right? Like I educate women on what their cycles should look like so that when they go into the doctor, they can say something's off. Like this is where I am. This is what I was told I'm supposed to be feeling, and it's not happening. And so if you're struggling, if you feel like you're sitting in doctor's offices, or you feel like you're not getting answers, or you're being told that you're crazy, or that everything's in normal ranges and you feel off, it's up to you to start to do things like track your cycle, adjust your nutrition, look into food sensitivities, do the proper hormone testing, all these things that we've talked about today, so that you can start to understand your unique body, because the doctor only gets to know you for that 20 to 45 minutes that they see you in the appointment. They do not know what you're putting in your mouth. They do not know how you're sleeping. They do not know anything else about your lifestyle. And that's what they need to know about. That's why I love functional medicine. That's why I think everybody should be working with a functional medicine practitioner, because the journey is different. It is so worth it. Rebecca, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm so grateful for you. You've been such a light in the group. I love your energy. I love that you are never afraid to ask questions, which really helps illuminate things that other people in the group sometimes are feeling, but you're always willing to come out and ask the questions. So thank you so much for being here for this podcast, but also just for being part of my tribe. I'm so grateful for you. And this episode will for sure touch some hearts and will help women understand that it's not okay to not feel okay.
Thank you so much, Jenny.
Have a great day, my friend. We'll talk soon.